Hi, this is lesson 8, and today's lesson is about sabotage. When you work with ritual survivors, you're going to deal with a lot of internal sabotage. They purposefully split the child's identity and then pit the two sides against each other. There's many kinds of sabotage that can be put in. You'll deal with it over and over again. They'll put a system inside the person, and each system has multiple domains in it, and every domain is going to have a strong man in charge, and every strong man in charge of that system will have gatekeepers. Gatekeepers can be demonic entities, but they can also be human. It can be another human, or it can be a part of the person themselves. And gatekeepers kind of act like traffic signals. They won't let things go. They won't let traffic flow. So they won't let information flow from one side to the other, and they won't let parts and memories go back and forth. And they're there so that the bondage stays in place. They're kind of like a guard station. And don't let that scare you, because, you know, we have all authority. And as long as the free will of that person is engaged, the Holy Spirit can take them anywhere they want to go in their system at any time. He can reach in and he can pull out a part to deal with. He can pull out a memory to deal with. He can bypass gatekeepers. One person that I worked with, she could see the gatekeeper, and this one was a demonic entity, and the Holy Spirit came like a dove and took her just right over his head and into the part of her system that he wanted to deal with that day. And she could sense the frustration of that being, but he could do nothing about it, because the power of the Most High, it's not bound by anything. It's not bound by the programs, by the entities that are attached. So as long as that person is ready and willing to see whatever is there, the Lord can take them where they need to go. It's just the work of getting them ready. You know, what would it mean if there was something there? Okay, so the system is divided into sections, but the parts of the system are actually divided into what can be called like cult loyal. So they're loyal to the occult, they're loyal to the programmers, loyal to the entities, and then God loyal, the ones that are loyal to God Most High. And it can also be divided into parts that are loyal to self and are helpers and encouragers of self, or it can be parts that are not loyal to self. So they're the antagonistic parts. And you can have parts that are loyal to the occult, but they're also loyal to self. So just because they're loyal to the cult doesn't mean that they're against the person in general. So you just kind of have to ask questions to find out where their loyalties lie and what their emotions are about the other parts, about the person themselves. Okay. The ones that are antagonistic, the parts that are antagonistic, they can see the parts that have denial as gullible, as stupid. They can antagonize them and laugh about it secretly, just kind of like a bully on the playground that you could never get away from. It's a bully that's built in, and the thoughts that you have, you don't even know they're not yours, that they're actually coming from somebody who hates you. So it's really good work to take thoughts of self-hatred and thoughts of condemnation captive, because they're typically part of the programming. I'm going to give you an example. One person I dealt with, she had an office job, and she was trying to run the office and do some marketing and make a flyer, and she had a time crunch that she had to get it done. She was the only one in the office. She made the flyer, she went to go print it, it didn't print, she went back to her computer, it was gone. She made the flyer again. She went to go print it. She went back and it was gone. She kept doing the work, and then it was disappearing. And she thought it was demonic oppression coming against her. Well, she got more and more worked up because of the time crunch, and that's a really big pressure for people who've overcome the ritual abuse, because they build situations on purpose to increase the internal pressure. So she got more and more worked up, and she actually lost time, which is she wasn't aware of where she was. Like another part came forward, but she wasn't co-conscious with that part. She wasn't aware she had switched. Just, she was so overwhelmed. She went back into the brain, and this other part came forward. Well, while that part was forward, it went around and threw papers everywhere and wrecked the entire office. I mean, it looked like a hurricane had happened. And so when that part went back, she looked around and she could not believe the chaos that had happened. And again, she thought this was demonic activity coming against her. But when we were doing a session and we were talking about what was happening and who was responsible, and asking the Lord for some insight, we found out it was a part of her that did it. So she was telling me the story that the demonic were harassing her, and she was believing the story she was telling me. But what was really happening was it was one of these program parts inside that were programmed to sabotage her and enjoy it. And so you really got to work with the person to find out, okay, what do you get? So if you're talking to the one who's doing the sabotage, you say something like, what do you get out of this? How does it help you to do this sabotage? How does it help you to make her that frustrated? And you get to the motive, and when you find the motive, you're going to find the program. And you may not be able to minister to that part completely, but you can start a dialogue, and you can help the person be aware, and you can have them journal so that, you know, they can sit down one day and just say, okay, they're going to have that part that sabotages. Journal. You can assign it a name or ask it a color, ask it some identifying feature, and say, okay, this week I want you to try and sit down and just let that part tell you what they need you to know. And so they sit down and journal the thoughts that are coming. And as they develop in their skills, their communication skills inside, they'll be able to have a dialogue back and forth. And they'll have encouraging parts come and, bring peace to the situation. It's kind of like being a hostage negotiator. You want to listen to the one who's got the power and is antagonistic, but you also want to keep in mind all the ones who are there and feeling afraid, and you want to try and de-escalate the situation. So you kind of got to ask questions to find out where the pressure is. Why is this part doing this? What changed to make this kind of thing happen? And they may tell you they got a signal. It can be like a frequency that's sent to the brain. It can be something that was said in an email. There are numbers that can trigger certain programs. It can be anything. But once you develop the communication with the parts, you can find out how this thing gets triggered and why it gets triggered, and what they're told to do and what they think will happen if they don't do what they're told. There's a lot of teasing out of the information that you just have to be patient and work with them. It's baby steps sometimes. Sometimes you might make giant leaps, but it's okay to take your time, and it's okay to just let the person become aware. If you move too much too fast, it can be really unsettling for them. And so you've got to see, are they starting to be agitated? Are they starting to rock back and forth? Are they starting to rub their head, or are they starting to shake? Are they nervous? Do they keep looking around to see, are they acting like they're in danger? So when you start to see those signs of agitation, you got to just slow down and say, I can see that there's some distress. Let's talk about what's going on for you. What are you feeling inside? Where in your body are you feeling some tension? And what does it feel like you need? And just be really present with them and help them become present with what's going on, because they may be so disconnected from what their body is doing, they don't even know they're doing it. They can start rubbing and scratching and just getting very agitated. So the more calm and in the flow of the Spirit that you remain, the more you're going to help the person in front of you. And you want to go at the pace that they can go. If they're getting answers to the questions and you're getting good communication, you're good to move forward. And if they start getting agitated and they say, I don't know, then you need to just slow down and just synchronize with them and say, yeah, this is really hard. What would it mean to you if this was coming from the inside? And you deal with their feelings about feeling that vulnerable. Okay, another kind of sabotage is when the person loses track of their personal belongings and they have to purchase things over and over because they aren't present enough in their own body to manage their possessions. And this can be happening because their parts are so busy in the astral realm doing whatever they're doing, whatever assignment they're on there, that their conscious self is actually running on just a fraction of the power that they need. And so they act confused, they can get in fender benders, they can forget to pay bills, and it can be really hard for them to function. And so you have to see, okay, where is their energy? Where is it being spent? And usually it's in the astral realm. Another kind of sabotage is the reprogramming that can happen at night. However that child got damaged in the first place, the programmer will train parts of them to be abusive to other parts of them in the same way that the programmer was. So basically the programmer's building an internal controller, an internal programmer, and that part won't even know they're part of the person. They'll think they're the programmer interjected into the brain. And so how they set that up is they'll put the child in some kind of danger, whether it's emotional or physical or whatever, and the child's in high distress. And then they'll have their programmer that they're supposed to bond to come in and swoop in and rescue them. And just that rescue alone creates a trauma bond with that programmer. So that programmer has a really strong bond already with that child. Well, then that programmer turns on them and starts, abusing them. And so that creates a split. And the part of them that was in that trauma bond will remain loyal to the programmer, and the part of them that split off will remember the programmer's abuse and betrayal. And you have those two things inside the same body. Somebody who loves them and is so bonded to them, feels like they are safe and loved with them, and then they have somebody that absolutely despises that programmer. And when both of those are in the same body, both of those parts, you've got a conflict, and everything that the bonded part does to get close to that programmer brings this part closer to abuse. And so this part can feel like the part in denial is their enemy. And so it creates a lot of turmoil inside. Okay, there can be a lot of oppression that comes with survivors, and there can be demonic attack and witchcraft and astral travel, like covens that attack and spirits that attack. Absolutely, it can be parts of themselves doing it, but it also can be parts of themselves who are loyal to the occult and loyal to the programmers, loyal to the entities who call on those things. So when things are stirred up for the person and they think they're under attack, what's really happening is somebody who's loyal is calling that attack in. And so you've got to really kind of probe and ask questions. Okay, what's going on? And you ask the Lord to help you understand, is this coming from the inside or the outside? And you just ask questions to understand where it's coming from, what started the process, what's happening that's causing this to continue, and what the parts feel like the benefit of that is. And you just kind of negotiate and you talk them through, and you just try and understand. You're not coming at this by trying to change the parts. You've got to come at this by trying to understand them. If they think you're there to change them, you'll feel like you're hitting up against a brick wall. If they think you're there to understand them, then they'll understand that they can communicate with you, and they're not going to be judged, and they're not going to be manipulated into doing something differently. They're going to be helped to see what they can't see, because both sides need the information that the other side has. And if there weren't all these gatekeepers and blocks and memory blocks and programming in the way, then they could come to unity a lot faster. And so your job is to listen and synchronize with both sides and help them understand, oh, this child was in trauma and bonded, and that's a normal thing for a child to bond to someone who helps them. That's actually a normal behavior. That's not a bad behavior. It was the programmer that had the bad behavior. And so it helps the part that is being tormented by the programmer to realize that this child was only behaving naturally, and they were only behaving with the information that they had. And the overwhelm was so great they couldn't remember it, and then blocks were put in place. And so you're helping them see each other's side. This one will think, oh, you're so mean, you're so terrible, you're so cruel to me, you say such hateful things. Well, yeah, they do. But they were taught that, a lot of times those are the words that were spoken over them when they were programmed. And they're told to hate the one who got them into the mess. They're actually programmed to continue hating them, and they're given all kinds of reasons why. Okay, so you just have to kind of gently probe and get the person to recognize that the drama could be coming from the inside. Parts could be calling the attack from the outside, but it could be parts inside creating their own drama. So then you kind of ask, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to prevent? What kind of threats have been given to keep this program going? Is it still necessary for those programs to be in place? What is stirring up the anger? And sometimes it's a demonic hand that's like turning up the fire on the inside. And so you just ask the Lord, could you come down and just shut the fire off? It'll look like a pot that's boiling, and the Lord comes in and just, turns it down, and they'll feel an immediate release. Sometimes physically they will. So then you ask him, what would it be like for all the energy that you guys are using against each other? What would it be like if you came alongside each other and you actually used your energy for the same purpose? Can you imagine how much you would get done and how much better you would feel? So you want to get them thinking towards that way. You don't have to get them moving that way immediately, but you want to plant those seeds of thought that way. And you want to help the person realize how divided their thoughts are. They are so used to the thoughts that they're thinking that they don't even recognize them as self-hatred. It just feels true. So you want to have them start recognizing their internal dialogue. And as tempting as it is for them to continue on that same thought pattern, they're going to need to work to realize that the programs are running, and it's as valid as this feels, it isn't real. So they're going to work to conform to the mind of Christ, conform to the truth. And they don't have to do this work alone. You'll be helping them and reminding them of what Scripture says, what God has said in other sessions. And God himself will be helping them. They just need to ask. Becoming aware is such good work. It's hard work because a lot was done for us to not be aware. So you want to just praise them for when they start to get curious and go, wow, that was really good for you to ask that. Encourage them to draw things. Like when they feel undone and they don't know what's happening, encourage them to just start drawing. Just like, it's called abstract drawing. And abstract drawing doesn't even have to be shapes and symbols and words and pictures. It can just be whatever's coming. It can be lines and circles or whatever, but it works to help get that information going. And if they do it long enough, you'll find something on there that will help you understand what's going on for them. Like if they have a lot of black, they're going to have a lot of rage or helplessness, a lot of hopelessness. So black can be those really absolutely hopeless emotions, or really strong negative emotions, hatred, rage, things like that. So if they have a lot of black on the page, then you know there's some really strong traumatic memories that are being pulled up, and you're going to have to synchronize with that. A lot of times I recommend that the people I work with make something called a collage. Now, a collage is just pictures, and it can be cut out of a magazine. It can be words cut out of magazines. It can actually be just like a document on the computer, like maybe, what do I use? Keynote. I use Keynote because I have a Mac, but people use PowerPoint. So you can tell them to go to Pinterest and listen to the inside, listen to what the Lord is saying, and they'll hear a word. So let's say they hear strawberry. So they go and they look for images, like they can go to Pinterest or Google Images or DuckDuckGo, images, and pick up, just look through the pictures. They don't know why they're picking that. They just heard it. But if you'll follow that, it will lead you to what you need to know. And there's no wrong picture. There's no wrong word. So you just let them express freely by putting all the pictures on the collage. And then you want to take the collage and you want to talk to them about the collage. Like, let's say you have 3 little girls playing on the playground over here, and then you have like a big bear somewhere on the collage. So you ask the 3 little girls, do they get along with each other? Do they work together? What do they think about the bear? And when do they notice the bear is like either a threat or a friend or whatever it is? So you're just going around and you're asking questions about how the pictures interact, relate, how they got to be there, who on the collage picked the picture. You're just gathering information like a detective to help them understand with words why they picked those pictures. You're tapping into some deep right brain information when you're using pictures, and then you work on bringing that information to the left brain. And there's some people that it takes months for them to go through a collage, and there's some people that can do one every time. You just follow the pace of the person in front of you and ask questions and make sure they stay regulated while you're talking about it. Okay, so sometimes people might hear a demonic name and put a picture of a demon on the collage. And yes, that's probably somebody that they've been connected to, but also you have to be aware that when somebody is so tormented and so highly demonized, they've actually been programmed to believe that is them. And so there's a high chance when you see something like that on the collage that the person actually has a part that plays out that role. And so you just gently ask questions. Is this a part of you? Is this something that you were shown? Does this represent a person? Is this an actual spirit? When did you get introduced to that? what kind of things were happening. And you'll gently get there, little by little. Okay, so there are rituals that happen to the survivor, and those can be really dark religious events. And then there's programming that happens, and those two can be combined. So there can be programming that gets the person to the point of the ritual. So when the person is so overwhelmed and worked up, they know they've got them where they want them, then they take them into the ritual. And so the stuff done before the ritual can be so horrific on purpose so that they'll never remember what was done in the ritual. And so they can have a lot of conflict about trying to go to a certain memory because of all the pre-work that was done to get them ready for the ritual or the big event. So you just have to be patient with them, be cautious with your questions, just try to understand and try to let them know you're okay. If they start being distressed, you remind them you're here. You can tell them, let's ground you. What do you feel? And they can say, oh, well, I feel my feet on the floor, or I feel the arms of the chair. Okay, what do you see? I see a lamp. I see a picture. What do you hear? I hear birds singing outside, whatever they're hearing. So you want to go with their senses and kind of ground them, because you need them to remember where they are. They don't have to relive the experience. They don't have to abreact, which is this breathing that happens deep in the diaphragm when they're very, very terrified, and they start breathing really fast. And then it's like as if they're in the memory. That doesn't have to happen. It's okay if it does, but it doesn't have to, because you can synchronize with them and you can ground them along the way, and you can recognize when things are going too fast, and you can help them deal with the information that's already there before you go on for more. You can help them ask the Lord to put it aside, thank the Lord for what you did that day, and then ask the Lord to encapsulate it, like maybe in the power of his blood or in the name of Jesus, or build a strong tower in Jesus' name and put that memory inside so that it's not in the forefront of their brain, and they can go on with their week, and you can come back around to it. And you don't have to go beyond their ability. And just because something's right here and they feel it doesn't mean they're ready to deal with it. And so you can ask the Lord, what do you want to do here? Is there something you want them to know? How do you want us to go from here? And bring the Lord in it and ask him along the way, because he'll have really genius ideas. He knows each part of them. He knows when they were created, what they need. He's got it all. And so you just have to bring him into it and listen to him along the way. Okay, so I wanted to give you an example of self-sabotage being set up and how programming and rituals were used together. So this is a person that I work with that when she was little, she was given tasks to do that had a time limit on them. And what she didn't know is that there was no way she could have gotten it done. So like, let's say you're playing the game of perfection, and they will use games like that. But let's say you're playing the game of perfection and they only give them half the amount of time to do everything. So they get more worked up each time. And when the thing pops off, then they're taken away and they're tortured. And they said, nope, you got to come back. You got to do it better. And so they shorten the amount of time and they increase the load on purpose to build the anxiety and build the tension, because the child, it's really hard to think straight. When you're a little kid and you're going to get in trouble, it's really hard to think straight. So they can have a lot of anxiety that isn't even letting them like hold the pieces, So that happens enough times. And the parts that are getting tortured, because they're split off and tortured, the parts that are getting tortured are getting so mad at the one who's like doing the game, because they're the ones taking the torture, and they don't know that there was no way that person could have done it. There's no way. They wouldn't have given her enough time. They never intended to give her enough time. And the parts don't recognize, hey, not finishing a game on time isn't a valid reason for torture. Like there aren't those logical thoughts in the children. So this just happens over and over, and they're doing it on purpose, because the more often they do it, the more parts they're splitting into, and they're building layers of parts, and they're building a hierarchy, and they want some parts to completely separate from the body and just say, I am done being a human. I am done being in that body. And then, so that happened. And then what they did was they took the girl and they tied her up like a cattle, like a cattle hogtied, and then they took her off to a ritual where they actually, she went through a death experience, and they joined her to an entity. So they created a part that believed they were that entity. And so that entity was in charge of this entire system. And most of the parts in this section were so full of self-hatred towards the little girl. And so they were given the job to tie her up. So just like they experienced, they were given the job to tie her up. And so they would tie her up mentally, with condemnation, with self-hatred, with confusion, with sabotage. And here the person was just, trying to get through a day, just trying to live life, not knowing that all of this was coming from the inside. She knew that she was struggling, but she didn't know why. So we had to bring truth just little by little. And it was a lot of work for her to recognize that the antagonists were actually part of her. Because it's easier to think, oh, it's the demons, it's the programmers. But it's really hard to recognize. It's parts of self. And so we did a lot of work to get her to see that we got the antagonistic sabotage parts, to see that it wasn't her fault. She was never going to be able to do the task. And we did a lot of work to let her see that what they built out of those parts that were trained to hate and harm herself, they were trained to harm others. We had to get her to see that those parts didn't have a choice. They were the ones being tortured into that behavior. And it wasn't that she became something terrible. It's that something terrible was done to her. So when all of that information was talked about, and Jesus was brought into the situation, he said, there's a kingdom of darkness where there's always conflict. There's always jealousy and strife, and people are picking up rocks and throwing them at each other. And he said, then there's the kingdom of light, and you come to me, and I am the rock, and water comes out of me, and living water will continually come out of the rock for you. So you can stay there and you can continue throwing rocks at each other, or you can come into my kingdom and separate from all of that. And you can drink that living water and be refreshed, be restored, and live in grace. And the change is so powerful. The person can see parts collapsing into themselves and then coming back into them as a person. It's called integration, and it can happen just spontaneously when the truth comes. And Jesus said, you're never going to be able to perform your way out of a crisis. And that helped the conscious person And it helped the subconscious, because that was the belief system that the enemy was planting. And Jesus knew it, and he came and spoke to it. And when he said that, all the parts collapsed and integrated, and there was peace. There was peace physically in her, and there was peace emotionally. And that whole system that took them a long time to program was torn down, just with patience and with Jesus coming into it.